The fine margins of a magical Winter Olympics leaves Team GB with a huge question. Balancing at the top of a chute of snow and ice, high in the Italian Alps, Zoe Atke plugged in her tunes and dropped. The 23-year-old was beaming before she even slowed to a halt at the bottom of the halfpipe, a bronze medal already in the bag. She jumped for joy before the tears began in earnest on the podium, a lifetime dream fulfilled. Only a little over 12 hours earlier, GB's quartet of curlers tried to hold back their own tears, collecting medals 200 kilometers away in Cortina. They had been the better team for much of an edgy final against Canada, but walked away feeling like they had lost gold rather than won silver. It remains to be seen whether the four will reunite for one more go in the French Alps, the next bonanza of winter sport, in 4 years' time. Those medals contributed equally to GB's tally at what can safely be described as the nation's best ever Winter Olympics, but also encapsulate the feeling of what might have been. From a purely statistical point of view, both those realities coexist. A 15th place finish in the medal table is GB's best ever at a Winter Games. The 5-medal total matches the record haul from Sochi 2014 and Pyeongchang 2018, but the 3 golds won marked a breakthrough, with GB having never won more than one on a single day before. Those golds in themselves encompass the full sporting spectrum. Matt Weston went into the men's skeleton as the overwhelming favorite, and withstood the peculiar weight of Olympic pressure that caused other favorites at the Games, from Ilya Malinin to Mikaela Shiffrin, in the Alpine combined, to combust. He then went on to replicate that success in the mixed event with Tabby Stoker, turning a 0.3 seconds deficit into a 0.17 winning margin, his formidable self-belief probably as big a factor as his unmatched skill at sliding downhill. On the flip side, Charlotte Banks recovered from crushing disappointment at 2 games in a row in the individual event, and all the pressure she piled on herself to win mixed gold with Hugh Nightingale, turning around her Olympics after a couple of consolation pints. Dr. Kate Baker, UK Sports Performance Director, described Milano Cortina as far and away our most successful games ever, both in terms of total medals achieved but also the number of Olympic champions. She said, "We are absolutely delighted with that. But we also really delighted about the amount of talent that is showing behind them, ready for the French Alps." The fine margins of a magical Winter Olympics leaves Team GB with a huge question. The snow fell like sifted sugar beneath the floodlights, softening the roar of the crowd into something almost sacred. It was the last night of the Winter Olympics, and the mountains seemed to lean closer, as if they too were holding their breath. For Team GB, it had already been the most magical games in living memory. They had arrived with modest expectations and left a trail of astonishment in their wake. A teenage snowboarder from Milton Keynes had landed a trick she'd only mastered 3 weeks earlier in a wind-battered car park. A pair of ice dancers who funded their training by teaching toddlers to glide had delivered a routine so tender that hardened commentators wiped their eyes on live television. A skeleton slider, once written off after a shoulder injury, had hurled himself headfirst down an ice chute at 90 miles per hour and come away with a medal decided by 100th of a second. 100th. That number lingered over everything, because for all the magic, for all the improbable brilliance, the medal table told a story of fine margins, brutal, microscopic, merciless. 3 fourth-place finishes. 2 silvers separated by less than the width of a skate blade. A curling semifinal lost on the final stone by the thickness of a hairline crack in the ice. And now, on the final night, came the last chance. The mixed team alpine parallel slalom, an event so fast it felt like a blink, was not meant to be Britain's grand stage. Alpine skiing had never been their territory. The Alps were someone else's backyard. Yet through grit and a touch of serendipity, a disqualification here, a gust of wind there, Team GB had fought its way to the gold medal final. They stood at the top of the floodlit course in red, white, and blue skin suits, helmets tucked under arms, breath ghosting into the night. Below them, twin tracks of ice dropped like mirrored lightning bolts, gates flickering past in a blur. First to the bottom by combined times would take gold. Across from them stood a team bred in mountains, raised on snow, fluent in gravity. The British quartet gathered in a tight huddle. "Whatever happens," said Amara, the team captain, her voice steady but her eyes bright, "we race like we belong here." They bumped helmets. They launched. The first pair exploded from the start gates. Ed, compact and fearless, attacked the course with wild precision, carving so close to the poles they snapped back against his suit. His rival glided with machine-like smoothness. They crossed the line almost together. Up at the top, a coach stared at a tablet, lips moving silently. 200 sup, he breathed. Cheers erupted from the small knot of British fans. Next came Amara. Her run was poetry, balanced, daring, defiant. Midway down, she felt the faintest chatter beneath her skis, a vibration like doubt. She adjusted, shaved her line tighter around a gate, and sprinted through the final section. At the finish, she looked sideways. Her opponent's hand shot up in triumph. The time flashed. 300ths down. Overall, 100th in Britain's favor. The mountain seemed to inhale. Third pair. A young debutant named Ollie, cheeks still boyish beneath his visor. He had nearly quit the sport at 17 after funding fell through. Tonight he was racing for Olympic gold. Halfway down, he took a risk, cutting inside on a turn that coaches had warned against. For a split second, his ski skittered. The crowd gasped. He recovered, legs burning, lungs on fire. At the line, he collapsed into the snow. 400ths behind. Crackled the radio. Overall, 300ths down. Everything would come down to the anchor leg. Maddie adjusted her gloves at the top. She had missed a medal in the giant slalom a week earlier by 1/10 of a second. She had smiled bravely at the cameras and said all the right things about pride and perspective. But that number had followed her into her sleep. 1/10. Now she needed to find 300ths. The starter counted down. 5. The world narrowed. 4. She could hear her heartbeat in her helmet. 3. She thought of dry slopes in rain-soaked English towns. Of 5 a.m. training sessions. Of her mother working double shifts to afford lift passes abroad. 2. She leaned forward. 1. The gates snapped open. She flew. The course blurred. Left. Right. Edge. Drive. The ice sang beneath her skis. Halfway down she sensed, rather than saw, that she was ahead. The red of her rival flickered in the corner of her vision, slightly behind. "Don't protect it," she told herself. Attack. Into the final pitch she hurled everything she had, thighs screaming, vision tunneling. The last gate loomed. She clipped it, just slightly, and felt the faintest tug at her outside ski. She crossed the line and skidded to a stop, heart hammering.